Namaskar, welcome to Kalam IAS. This is Vasudev Singh Bhati and we are doing the news case. So in news case, we pick up one topic every week and the most important topic in the week is discussed on this particular day. So today's, the most important topic of the past 1 week is that the statement by Chief Economic Advisor of India, Mr. Nageswaran, and he says that the government alone is not responsible for all the social and economic problems in our country, including the unemployment, and for which there was a lot of debate on TV that how can officer of a government can say such thing, that government is not responsible for providing jobs to the people. So he says that it is not the government's duty to solve all the socio-economic problems of the country. It is the commercial sector, it is the industrial sector which has to actually provide the jobs to the people. The actual investment and the jobs in the country are provided by the commercial sector. Now, from prelims as well as the mains perspective, this statement is not very important because UPSC is not going to ask question upon this statement, but it makes the unemployment data and figures of unemployment, it brings those into the news, and as a result, we should look at those data and we should look at those trends, as we know that UPSC has a habit of asking question based on trends. Like the UPSC will ask questions on the unemployment rate has been increasing consistently or decreasing consistently from past 5 years, or labor force participation rate, or worker population ratio, or UPSC might also frame a conceptual question like what do you mean by worker population ratio and give 4 statements. So you should have conceptual clarity upon all these concepts. So first of all, we are going to look at the concepts related to unemployment in India. The first is unemployment rate. Now, a lot of people think unemployment rate basically means the number of people who are unemployed in the total population, which is not true. The unemployment rate in India is captured by, unemployed upon total labor force. It is not the total population, it is the total labor force. Out of the labor force, how many percentage of people are actually unemployed? So, what do you actually mean by total labor force? Labor force is the number of people who are looking for employment. They may be employed, they may not be employed, but these are the people who are looking for employment. So to capture what is the labor force, there is another indicator which is labor force participation rate. Now the labor force participation rate is equals to labor force, that is the number of people who are looking for employment among the population of 15 and above. In India, it is among the population of 15 and above. In certain countries, it is also between 15 and 65. They consider people between 15 and 65 as the people belonging to working age population. But in India, it is calculated for 15 and above. So among the people who are whose age is between above 15 years in India, how many among them are actually looking for job? They might be working, they might not be working, but these are the people who want to work. So these people are called labor force, and labor force participation rate captures the number of percentage of people in this working age group who are actually willing to work and who want to work. And unemployment rate captures among the people who are willing to work, how many are not actually getting the jobs. So unemployment rate captures the number of people who are not getting jobs despite their willingness to get a job. Now the third concept that you should be aware about is worker population ratio. Now the worker population ratio is equals to unemployed upon population 15 and above, employed upon population 15 and above. So worker population ratio also does not take the whole population of the country. So there are 3 important indicators used by government in the periodic labor force survey as well as different reports by the government. So there are 3 indicators. One is unemployment rate, other is labor force participation rate, then we have worker population ratio. So first of all, worker population ratio or labor force participation rate. Labor force participation rate is basically among the working age population, that is 15 and above as per the government of India, people who are age 15 and above, how many percentage of those people are actually willing to work, how many of them are actually looking for work and they are willing to work, that is labor force participation rate. Now among those people of the 15 and above population, how many are actually getting the work? Then we get the worker population ratio, the people who are employed upon the population which is above age 15 and 15 and above. And among the people who are looking for work, that is the labor force, how many are actually not getting the employment? Then we get the unemployment ratio. So unemployment ratio does not take the whole population into consideration. It takes into labor force into consideration. That is the people in the people aged 15 and above and who are looking for work. How many percentage of such people are not getting the work? So that is unemployment rate. Now there are two statements that you should know about India's unemployment rate as well as labor force participation rate and worker population ratio. That is, the labor force participation rate and worker population ratio are increasing consistently from past 5 years. Every year they have been increasing from past 5 years, and the unemployment rate has been declining consistently from past 5 years. So you know that among the working age people, if people want to work and people are getting employed, then that is a good thing. So increase in labor force participation rate and worker population ratio is a good indicator of growing India's economy, as well as reduction in unemployment rate is a good indicator of increasing employment condition in our country. So regarding that, we have the graph here of the unemployment rate. You do not have to memorize the figures, just looking at the graph will help you remember the trend that is there in the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate as per the periodic labor force survey, that is PLFS, from 2017-18 it has been reducing consistently from 6 to 5.8, 4.8, 4.2, 4.1 and then 3.2 in 22-23. So the latest periodic labor force survey says that the unemployment rate has been reducing consistently from past 5 years as per the periodic labor force survey of the government of India. Now if we look at the unemployment rate in usual status in different categories of people, for example, what is the unemployment rate of female in India, or what is the unemployment rate of rural people in India, or what is the unemployment of rural male people in India. So we have three categories: rural, urban and rurban. Rural plus urban would include combined, that is the unemployment rate in the country. So among the rural, we have rural male, rural female and rural person. Then among the urban, we have male, female and person, and combined we have male, female and person. So this is the final unemployment rate of the country. That is the final unemployment rate of the country, that is 3.2%, as we have seen in our past graph. This is the of taking all the people into consideration, rural as well as urban, male as well as female. So the final unemployment rate as per the periodic labor force survey 20-23 is 3.2%. But we should also know the major trends that are there in different categories. What are the trends that we should know about? First thing that we should know about is that if we consider rural and urban unemployment rate, a lot of people would think that it is the urban areas where we generate more employment, but the unemployment rate in rural areas is lower than in urban areas. That means the berojgari, the unemployment in urban areas is higher than in rural areas. So the unemployment rate in urban areas is higher than in the rural areas. The unemployment rate in urban areas is higher than the rural areas. There is another myth that a lot of people think, that the unemployment rate must be higher in the women. No, it is not very high in the women, because the labor force participation rate itself is very low in the women. The labor force of women is very low. As a result, the unemployment rate of women is also very low. And we see that if we consider the combined male as well as female unemployment rate, we see it is the male unemployment rate which is higher than the female unemployment rate. It is the male unemployment rate which is higher than the female unemployment rate. It is true for rural areas also, that male unemployment rate is higher than female unemployment rate. It is true for all over India combined, the combined data of male as well as the combined data of male of rural as well as urban areas and female of rural as well as of urban areas. We have that unemployment is higher among men. Unemployment is higher among male. And in rural areas also, the unemployment is higher among male. But in urban areas, the unemployment is higher among female. The unemployment is higher among female. So we have learned three things till now. First is that the rural areas have lower unemployment compared to urban areas overall. Okay. Next is, if we consider overall unemployment among male and female, the unemployment among female is lower than the unemployment among male. Now, if we consider rural and urban areas separately for male as well as female, then we say in rural areas the pattern is same as there in the overall Indian data, that the unemployment of female is lower in rural areas. But in urban areas there is an anomaly that the unemployment of female is higher in urban areas. So, these are the 3 points that we have learned till now. First, that the unemployment rate in rural areas is lower. Second, of women it is lower. Third, anomaly in urban areas where the unemployment rate of urban female is higher than the unemployment rate of rural, urban male. Now, the final thing is the trend across time. If we look at the trend across time, we see the unemployment rate has been reducing consistently throughout the years. In 2017-18, it was 6% and it has reduced to 3.2%. Now, it is true for all the categories here that the unemployment rate has been reducing consistently from past 5 years. If we take combined data of India, if we take rural India, if we take urban India, if we take rural female, rural male, urban female, urban male, male combined, female combined, all the 9 categories, there is one trend that the unemployment rate has been reducing consistently. So, if UPSC gives a statement, the unemployment rate of rural female has been increasing consistently from past 5 years, then that is going to be a wrong statement because it has been reducing consistently from past 5 years. So, these are the 4-5 points that you should be aware about. First, the difference between rural and urban. Second, the difference between male and female. That too in the not only in combined but also in rural and urban. Third, the trends across time. Now, these are the only things that you should be aware about. Apart from that, you do not have to memorize any of the data given here. These data are taken from the periodic labor force survey of the government of India, and these are just for if there is a question, there is an factual question, UPSC is never going to ask the percentage of unemployment rate in our country. UPSC will ask question based upon the trends and the larger trends and the the larger themes of the unemployment rate in our country. Now, the next thing is, if the unemployment rate has been reducing consistently from past 5 years, then why still there is a lot of hue and cry upon the unemployment in our country? So, when the chief economic advisor gave the statement that the government alone is not responsible, he gave the statement when the International Labour Organization ILO released a new report, that is unemployment in India. So, they released a new report, unemployment in India 2024, and as per the new report, these are the data given in the report released by the International Labour Organization, that unemployment has reduced, or in other words, the labour force participation has increased for all the sections including men, women, rural and urban in the past 3 years, that is 2019 to 2022. So, in past few years we say the labour force participation has increased, but it is still very low compared to the levels that was there in 2000. So, in 2000 the labour force participation was very high and it has been reducing consistently since 2000 till 2019, and in 2019 it started again going up. So, the unemployment, the employment condition in our country have been increasing from past few years, but that does not mean that we are better off, or we are we are not facing the problem of unemployment. We are still facing the problem of unemployment. If we look at the larger data, then since 2000 these have been reducing, and only in the past few years they have again increased. So, that is why the ILO said that the India is still facing the job crisis in our country. Now, if we look at the female labour force participation rate, then that is also has been increasing. So, 3 things that we talked about. Now, this is again given in the the periodic labor force survey as well as the economic survey of the government of India. So, it is an important data. Again, we do not have to remember any of the data points here. We just have to look at the larger trends. We have already looked at unemployment rate in rural, urban, male, female, all the categories, that what are the trends in unemployment rate. If we look at the worker population ratio and labor force participation rate, both of them follow same trends in different categories. So, what are the trends? If we look at the combined worker population ratio and labor force participation rate, that is of male and female combined, we see that both of these are high in 22-23 compared to 17-18. So the worker population ratio and labor force participation rate have been increasing consistently from past 5 years. This we have already talked about. Now, what is it that we have to see again? That is, when we compare rural and urban areas, where do you think the labor force participation rate is going to be high, in rural areas or urban areas? It is the rural areas where more number of people are actually willing to work and also getting the work. Labor force participation rate shows the willingness of work. That's 60% in rural areas, 50% in urban areas. If you look at the worker population ratio, that is around 60% in rural areas and 48% in urban areas. So the labor force participation rate as well as the worker population ratio are high in rural areas. So these follow the same trend that was followed in the unemployment rate, that the unemployment crisis is higher in urban areas compared to rural areas. Number of people who are getting employed, number of people who want to work is high in rural areas compared to urban areas. So the labor force participation rate as well as the worker population ratio is high in rural areas. Now, if we look at the male and female data, in male and female data, among the female, the trend is same, that the labor force participation rate as well as the worker population ratio are high in rural areas. Among the female, the trend is still the same. That is, the combined trend as well as the female trend are the same, that the labor force participation rate and the worker population ratio both are high in rural areas compared to urban areas. But if we look at the male labor force participation rate and worker population ratio, we see that the rural areas have higher labor force participation rate and worker population ratio compared to urban areas. The rural areas have higher worker population ratio as well as the labor force participation rate in for the men. So the rural areas have higher labor force participation rate as well as the worker population ratio if we consider men, if we consider women, if we consider combined. In all the three categories, the the labor force participation rate as well as the worker population ratio are higher in rural areas. So you should know about these larger trends, that unemployment, if it is high in rural areas or urban areas, labor force participation rate. First, you should know conceptually what is labor force participation rate. If you do not know, just write down the equation which was given in the first slide. What is the equation of labor force participation rate? What is the equation of worker population ratio? And what are the larger trends? Is it high for women or men? If we compare men and women, who has the higher labor force participation rate or worker population ratio? So if we look at female and male categories, then we see that if we look at female combined labor force participation rate, if we look at the female combined labor force participation rate and male combined labor force participation rate, we see that the men labor force participation rate and worker population ratio are higher than the women labor force participation rate. The men labor force participation rate and worker population ratio are higher than the female labor force participation rate and worker population ratio. So we see, if we compare men and women, the number of people who are willing to work and number of people who are getting the work is high for men. The number of people who are willing to work and number of people who are getting work is high for men when we compare men and women. When we compare rural and urban, we get that the rural people have higher willingness as well as propensity to get the work. At the same time, if we look at the unemployment rate, it is lower for women. Unemployment rate, we have seen it already, it is lower for women compared to men, and in rural and urban areas, it is lower for rural areas compared to urban areas. So these are the larger trends that you should be aware about, that in all the categories, rural areas have higher labor force participation rate as well as worker population ratio and lower unemployment rate. Urban areas, the job crisis is high. The number of people who are educated is more, the number of dependent people is more, the students are not getting jobs till they turn 25, 30 years. So as a result, the unemployment rate is higher in urban areas, the labor force participation rate is lower in urban areas. So these are the things that you should be aware about. That's it from my side today in the news case. Thank you very much. Thank you.